I built a house so smart it knows when I'm tired, but it didn't stop me from walking in like a zombie that night. The hallway lights flicked on automatically, soft and warm, but I barely noticed. My name is Vincent Marchetti. I'm 52, the founder of Marchetti Innovations, and the guy who once gave a TED Talk about resilience. That night, all I wanted was a hot shower and silence. Celeste was already in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of white wine like it was any other Tuesday. She glanced up when she heard me, her face neutral, then turned back to the sink. Jake had his university interview today. Her voice was low and even, but I felt the sting behind it. I closed my eyes. Damn, I thought it was next week. She didn't answer, just took a slow sip, then walked past me toward the living room. I stood there for a second, trying to remember the last time we had a real conversation that didn't feel like a formality. I changed out of my suit and joined her. Jake was upstairs, probably glued to a screen, and Natalie had dance rehearsal. Celeste sat on the couch with her legs curled under her, scrolling on her phone. The wine glass was half empty. I tried to fix it the only way I knew how. I'll talk to him in the morning. She didn't look up. Don't bother. He thinks you forgot on purpose. I flinched. That's not fair. Neither is blowing off your kid's big day. I sat down on the far end of the couch. I had 2 back-to-back investor calls. Beijing and Munich. We're rolling out the new modular panel next quarter. You know how important that is. Now she looked up. And Jake isn't? That shut me up. I rubbed my eyes, the fatigue setting in like cement. You don't even hear yourself anymore, do you? What's that supposed to mean? She didn't answer, just stood up, grabbed her phone and the glass, and headed upstairs. I sat there in the blue light of our smart system's night mode, wondering when she'd started dressing so sharply even for a night at home, wondering how long she'd been this distant. It was around 11 when I went to the kitchen for water. Her phone buzzed on the island. Just once. A tiny, discreet message bubble glowed on the locked screen. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Thinking of you too. Your hair was killer tonight. Bellamy. The contact name hit me first. Not Julius. Not even a real name, maybe. Just Bellamy. Like a character in a novel. I stood there staring at the message for a full minute. Then I put the phone down, walked upstairs like nothing happened, and lay in bed beside her without saying a word. But my mind was already racing. Something had changed, and I needed to know what. I didn't ask her about the message. Not the next morning, not the next week. I played dumb, smiled when appropriate, nodded during family dinners. Meanwhile, every spare moment I had went into finding out who the hell Bellamy really was. It didn't take long. Julius Bellamy, venture capitalist, 48, polished, media-trained, and insufferably smooth. Once linked to my brother Eric's solar startup before Eric died in that avalanche up in Vail. Back then, Julius called himself a connector. Now he called himself a vision partner in half a dozen companies that never made it past Series A. Celeste had never once mentioned him. Not in passing. Not in all our late-night wine talks back when we still talked. So when she said she had a gala thing on Friday, some fundraiser for sustainable equity or whatever euphemism the elite were using to justify $10,000 dinners, I smiled and said, "Wear the red dress. It'll go nice with the lighting at the Four Seasons." She didn't ask how I knew the venue. I watched her leave in that dress, and then I followed. I parked a block away in a nondescript black SUV, one of the prototype test units from our lab. Soundproofed interior. Surveillance rig hidden in a modified cup holder. It wasn't paranoia. Not anymore. It was data collection. They walked in together. Him with that studied confidence. Her with a laugh that felt borrowed from someone I didn't know. He touched her lower back. She didn't move his hand. I didn't need to hear what they said. Body language told me enough. I watched for 42 minutes. Didn't get out. Didn't confront. I recorded. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost with a tech arsenal. Motion tracking dash cams. Thermal drones. An AI pattern matcher that flagged any overlap between her spending and his. Turns out there was plenty. Dinner receipts tucked into her volunteer folder. a hotel charge in Miami the same weekend she claimed to be at a book club retreat in Des Moines. And most importantly, one shell company transferring small sums to a consulting firm Bellamy registered just 3 months ago. Guess who funded it with discretionary shares from her new equity advisory position? My own damn foundation. I confronted her the morning after I confirmed the Miami transaction. The kids were still asleep. It was just past 7. She was sipping her coffee at the breakfast island, acting like her world hadn't just collapsed. "You saw Julius," I said calmly. She didn't flinch, just looked up slowly, her face unreadable. "I did. And the Miami trip? Also real." I waited for her to elaborate, apologize, deny something. She didn't. "I want a divorce," she said, her tone as casual as if she were ordering a bagel. "I'll have Dana reach out, and I suggest you don't make this ugly." Dana was the most vicious divorce attorney in the Midwest. I laughed. Just once. Quiet and dry. "You're going to try and spin this like I'm the one who went too far." She shrugged. "You've been detached, distant. Honestly, you've been married to the company for years. I found something better." "I have files," I said. She smiled, not kindly. "Of course you do. But if you want a war, I'll give you one." The next day, I was served at the office. She accused me of surveillance, obsession, and manipulation. Claimed the house wasn't emotionally safe for the children. And suddenly, I was no longer Vincent Marchetti, clean energy pioneer. I was the controlling husband with anger issues, according to her new PR-boosted court filings. I watched as everything I built, my image, my home, my legacy, got diced up in court like it was nothing. And she didn't blink once. The thing about being publicly humiliated is that it makes people strangely eager to keep their distance. Not out of loyalty, out of self-preservation. I felt it for the first time at the Midwestern Tech Vanguard Gala, 3 weeks after Celeste filed. Normally, I was greeted like a headliner. Smiles, handshakes, subtle jostling for proximity. This time, the smiles were thinner, the handshakes looser. People were waiting to see if I was radioactive. Then came the real gut punch. "Vincent." My mother's voice, bright and performative, floated across the ballroom. She approached with Lorna, my younger sister, both of them wearing matching navy gowns like they were campaigning for co-empress. They exchanged air kisses. I stood there waiting for the small talk. But they had a different script. "I wanted to tell you in person," Marjorie began. "Lorna and I are investing in something new. A design tech platform with a sustainability angle." I felt my throat go tight. "Let me guess. Celeste's firm." Lorna smiled, not even bothering to look apologetic. "You always said to diversify. It's early stage, sure, but Julius has vision." That name again. Julius. I took a long sip of my drink. "You do realize he's using my money. My name. My children." Marjorie's smile didn't falter. "It's not personal. It's business." That phrase, "not personal," always came right before someone buried a knife between your ribs. Later that night, I spotted Miles across the room. My cousin. One of my oldest confidants and a board advisor to Marchetti Innovations. He'd always backed me, no matter how crazy my R&D ideas got. But tonight, he looked cagey. We shook hands, and he cleared his throat. "Just wanted to say I'm stepping back from advisory duties," he said quickly. "Too much on my plate right now." I studied his face. "Celeste got to you?" He glanced down at his drink like it held the answers. "She's got a story, and Julius knows how to pitch." "Are you serious?" I asked. He nodded. "There's buzz. She's framing herself as this next-gen design tech disruptor. Eco meets luxury. The whole green is glamorous angle." "And you believe that?" "I believe that people want to." That was the moment I realized how far she'd gone. It wasn't just about hurting me. It was about replacing me. Not just as a husband, but as a thought leader. A symbol. Thanksgiving was approaching. Normally, we did it at my place. The smart kitchen. The ridiculous 10-foot harvest table. But this year, Marjorie sent a formal text. "We're hosting. You're welcome to come. But please no outbursts. Let's keep it civil. For the children. I stared at the message, then deleted it. I didn't respond, and I didn't show up. Instead, I sat in my glass-walled study with a digital notebook and started diagramming connections. Names, investments, bank accounts, property records, all of it. Celeste, Julius, my mother, Lorna, even Miles. One by one, the circle had tightened around me. But they didn't realize I was still in the room. Watching, recording, documenting. I wasn't out. I was incubating. And when I came back, it wouldn't be to explain. It would be to expose. I waited until the smoke cleared. Let them sip cocktails in lofts I paid for. Let them walk red carpets under lights I engineered. Let them pretend I was fading, irrelevant, gone. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding in the shadows. First call I made was to Brant Espinoza, ex-military, former intelligence, now working in private operations. We'd crossed paths years ago when I was still green enough to believe that cybersecurity was something you could outsource. Brant didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Who's the target?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Julius Bellamy." There was a pause. "You're not the first to ask about him." I leaned forward in my chair. "Talk." Over the next 2 weeks, Brant and his team pulled the threads. I watched, listened, and documented every lead. Turns out Julius Bellamy wasn't even his name. He'd used 3 different aliases over the past 15 years, each one tied to a string of failed ventures, vaporware apps, biofuel scams, one solar project that went belly up 3 months after launch. Each collapse followed the same script: wealthy investors, glossy branding, inflated valuations, and then sudden disappearance. He'd been chased by litigation more than once, but always managed to slide through on technicalities. Gaps in jurisdiction. Loopholes. Settlements made just before court dates. It was a con, but a beautiful one. And Celeste had bought it wholesale. That was the moment I stopped reacting emotionally. I started thinking strategically. If Julius was building a throne on stolen bricks, I was going to buy the land it stood on. Using 3 shell companies, I began acquiring property around my family's estates. Old warehouses, empty lots, a derelict industrial museum outside Evanston, just a 20-minute drive from our family's lakeside retreat. No one noticed. It was all done through intermediaries, obscure LLCs with names like Havendev and Cedar Hill Partners. I didn't just buy dirt. I bought the narrative. Whispers started spreading. That I was liquidating. That I was stepping down. One investor said he heard I was moving to Iceland. Another swore I was dissolving Marchetti Innovations and going spiritual. I let them talk. I even fed the rumors. Quietly, I sold off a few non-essential assets. Publicly, I stopped showing up to events. When the press requested comments, I issued a short statement. At this time, I'm focused on renewal, reinvention, reflection. Let them think I was tired, broken, out of moves. Meanwhile, I was outfitting the old industrial museum. State-of-the-art AV system, biometric locks, backup generators, and a soundproof command suite in the basement. It looked abandoned from the outside. Inside, it was a war room. That was when Natalie caught on. My daughter was sharper than anyone gave her credit for. 16, introverted, observant. She walked into my study one evening while I was reviewing a satellite map of Julius's supposed campus outside of Boulder. She stood there quietly for a second. "Are you really moving to Iceland?" she asked. I smiled. "Do I look like someone who enjoys cold weather?" She shrugged. "Jake said Julius has been asking about your patents." Like casual questions. What happens to the company if your dad retires kind of stuff. I felt my spine straighten. "And you?" She looked at me, eyes serious. I told him Marchetti Innovations isn't his to ask about. I stared at her. "You told Julius that?" She nodded. Then, without prompting, she added, "I don't like him. He smells like metal and cologne. Like someone trying too hard." I nodded once. That night, I changed my will. Not because I was dying. Because it was time to draw lines. And my daughter had just chosen a side. Celeste and Julius thought I was unraveling. They didn't realize I was reloading. I sent the invitations by hand. Heavy cream cardstock, letterpressed names, formal as hell. Private family dinner and exhibit preview at the renovated Chicago Industrial Museum. They thought I was hosting a farewell event, something sentimental before my supposed retreat from the business world. Marjorie RSVP'd immediately. Lorna followed suit. Miles sent a text, "Didn't know you were into old factories. Sounds mysterious." "I'm in." Celeste took the bait without question. I could practically hear her heels clicking down the metaphorical red carpet. I let Natalie send the message to Jake. Her brother trusted her, still thought she straddled the neutral ground. I asked her to play along. She didn't hesitate. I want to see them squirm, she said quietly. The night of the dinner, I wore charcoal gray. No tie. Just enough formality to look unbothered. The museum looked stunning, dark concrete, repurposed iron beams, Edison bulbs glowing overhead like suspended amber. If you didn't know any better, you'd think it was a corporate art gala. Everyone arrived on time. Even Julius. He strolled in beside Celeste, wearing a midnight blue blazer and that 1,000-watt confidence of his. He didn't recognize the trap, not even as the doors sealed behind him with a soft magnetic click. We moved through the main gallery. Displays had been set up under vague banners: family legacy, innovation in motion, the human engine. It wasn't until we reached the main dining hall that things began to shift. Brant was in the control room, watching via a dozen hidden cameras. Everything was live, everything was being recorded. Vincent, Julia said, looking around the hall. This place is incredible. Really cinematic. I smiled. That's the idea. Dinner started like any other high-end event. Duck confit. Polenta. Napareds. Celeste gave a little speech, something bland about reconnection and future horizons. Lorna toasted to the next chapter. Then I stood up. I'd like to share something, I said, tapping my glass. A short presentation. The wall behind me lit up. A massive screen descended from the ceiling. The lights dimmed. A hush settled. First slide, a company logo no one recognized. Bellamy Advisory Group, I said. Founded 6 months ago. Celeste, you filed the paperwork. Use company time. Company money. I clicked forward. A flowchart appeared: bank accounts, dummy transfers, shell LLCs. This, I said, voice calm, is how you've been funding Julius's scam venture. Gasps. Murmurs. Next slide, security footage. Celeste and Julius. Hotel lobby. Miami. Her hand on his chest. Timeline of the affair, I said, with no emotion. Not that it matters now. Miles stood up. Vincent, sit down, I said sharply. You voted to reduce my shares. Based on projections that Julius faked. The screen changed again: emails, Slack messages, doctored spreadsheets. Then a mugshot. Julius. From 2012. Real name: Julian Riley. Charged in Denver for wire fraud. Pled out. Changed his name 2 months later. Julius lunged from his chair. You think this will hold up? I raised a hand. 2 federal agents emerged from the back entrance. Brant had done more than just watch. He'd handed over everything to the Financial Crimes Division. You've been under investigation for 3 weeks, I told him. They just needed the final thread. You walked into it. Celeste's face collapsed. She turned to my mother, who looked like she was about to faint. Lorna dropped her wine glass. As the agents cuffed Julius, Celeste tried to follow. One agent stopped her. You'll want to get a lawyer. We'll be in touch. Marjorie turned to me, voice trembling. You set us up. No, I said softly. You set yourselves up. I just made sure the lights were on when it happened. The doors unlatched with a soft hiss. No one moved. My empire had never looked so clean. And my enemies had never looked so small. By sunrise, it was everywhere. News outlets ran it under dramatic headlines: Green Energy Titan exposes internal fraud at private dinner, investor Julius Bellamy detained in shocking corporate sting, and my personal favorite: when smart homes fight back. Vincent Marchetti's digital revenge. Within 48 hours, Celeste's new firm was locked out of their office by the building's security system. Not by me, but by the landlord once they found out who had signed the lease. Apparently, they didn't want the liability. Federal agents froze the accounts linked to the shell companies. That included 2 family trusts that Marjorie had co-managed with Celeste, supposedly for community land initiatives. Lorna's design tech fund got flagged, too. All those glossy renderings and buzzword decks? Useless now. Her investors vanished like fog in sunlight. I watched it unfold from my office, the real one, on the 62nd floor. Still mine. Still untouched. Natalie came in around noon, wordlessly placing a mug of coffee beside me. She looked exhausted. Pale. They're freaking out, she said. Lorna tried to log into her trust account. It's zeroed out. I nodded. It's frozen, not empty. She stared at me. Do you even care what happens to them now? I turned away from the monitors. No. Not really. That night, Jake came home. He hadn't said much since the dinner. Too proud to cry, too old to throw a tantrum. He stood at the edge of my study like a guest in a stranger's house. Is it all true? He asked. Everything about Mom, about Julius? Yes. He rubbed his face. God. Then he sat down across from me, looked straight into my eyes. Can you fix this? It hit harder than I expected. His voice cracked just enough, like he wanted me to unburn the house I'd set on fire. I took a deep breath. This is the fix. He shook his head. No. This is punishment. Silence stretched between us like a bridge that might collapse under a single step. Your mother chose her path, I said finally. Jake stood. And so did you. He left the room without another word. A few hours later, Natalie knocked softly on my door. She looked wrecked. Her mascara was smudged. Her voice wavered. Why did you do it like that? She asked. You saw what they did. She stepped closer. I know. But you planned it like a movie. You destroyed them. They destroyed themselves. I just held up the mirror. She shook her head slowly. It didn't have to be like this. I wanted to argue. To explain. Instead, I just watched her as she turned and walked away. That night, I sat in the kitchen of my smart home. The lights dimmed automatically. The fridge offered me meal suggestions I ignored. The house was quiet, clean, efficient, and utterly empty. I had one. But in the places where love used to live, nothing but cold glass and a hollow kind of silence. A week later, I walked into the Marchetti headquarters alone. No assistants. No camera crews. Just me, a single leather notebook, and keys to a building I once dreamed of dying in. The lobby still had the bronze plaque with our founding motto, innovation through integrity. Jake helped pick the wording when he was 10. Back then he thought I built spaceships. The place was quiet. Empty. Most of the staff were working remotely now, a protocol I'd started before all this. I climbed to the top floor and opened the double doors to my old corner office. Same skyline view. Same custom desk. But it felt like it belonged to someone else. I sat down and started sketching. Not product ideas. Not prototypes. A different kind of blueprint, one for a think tank. A space for kids with ideas but no pedigree. Immigrants. Dropouts. Formerly incarcerated innovators. The ones no VC would touch. I was going to give them what no one gave me, a launchpad without strings. It wasn't altruism. It was penance. Brant called just before noon. Lorna tried to pawn the Faberge frame. I blinked. What? You know, the one that held that picture of you and Eric when you launched the wind turbine demo in '03? It was in the family archive. She sold it. She tried. Buyer flagged the serial number. Police got involved. I didn't say anything. Bram paused, then added, do you want me to make it go away? I leaned back in the chair. No. Let it ride. I hung up. I wasn't finished watching the consequences unfold. I pulled the drawer open. Tucked inside was an old printout of a child's essay, folded neatly into thirds. I hadn't looked at it in years. The Engine of Integrity by Jacob Marchetti, age 13. His opening line, my dad says real power doesn't come from the grid, it comes from keeping your word. I read that line 3 times. By the 4th, my throat was tight. This was back when Jake still followed me around plant tours asking questions about solar cells and recyclable casing. When he still believed I was a hero. Back before I taught him to win at all costs. I put the essay back and stared out the window. Snow was starting to fall over the skyline, a slow, soft erasure of everything beneath it. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Natalie. Grandma's in the hospital. I waited. She'll be fine, Natalie added. But the doctor said stress. Something about her heart rhythm. I think it scared her. Did she ask for me? No, she said. But I thought you should know. There was a pause. She told the nurses she had no regrets, Natalie added. Said she raised a family of winners. I sighed. Of course she did. You're not going to see her, are you? I don't think so. Silence again. Then, softer, she said you're becoming your father. I didn't answer. Because maybe I was. Ruthless. Respected. Feared. And if I was being honest, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Celeste requested the meeting through her lawyer. She didn't call. Didn't text. Just a formal email from Dana's office with a time, a location, and the phrase open to negotiation. It was held in a neutral suite at a boutique legal firm downtown. The kind of place with calming paint colors and a silent receptionist who probably had a psychology degree. Celeste arrived dressed like it was still her empire, cream blazer, perfectly tailored slacks, hair straightened and sleek. But her eyes told the truth. She was tired. Her smile didn't hold. Dana did most of the talking. We'd like to settle quietly. No more leaks. No more press. I nodded. That depends on what you're offering. Celeste exhaled. I'll leave Chicago. Her voice was flat. Resigned. In exchange, Dana said, sliding a typed agreement across the table, she requests a modest monthly payout. Enough to live privately. Nothing public. Nothing petty. I picked up the paper. Read it twice. Then I looked at Celeste. You'll stay gone. She nodded. I don't want this life anymore. Not with my name dragged through it. I signed. No hesitation. Dana smiled like a banker closing a loan. Afterward, I asked Celeste to wait a moment. Just the two of us. Dana stepped out reluctantly. Celeste stood by the window, arms folded. You really hated me that much? I asked quietly. She looked at me, her expression strange, something between guilt and exhaustion. I loved the version of you that looked at me like I mattered, she said. That version disappeared years ago. I didn't argue. There was no point. Take care of Natalie, she added. She won't say it, but she needs you more than she lets on. She left without looking back. A week later, Natalie moved into the guest wing. She didn't bring much, just her backpack, her laptop, and a single box of books and photos. I helped her hang her string lights, watched as she arranged her shelves just so. She was 16, but something about her felt much older now. You can redecorate the whole floor if you want, I said. She shrugged. I just want one thing. I waited. I need to know, she said, voice low, that if I ever mess up, you won't do to me what you did to them. It hit like a knife. She wasn't asking for gifts or promises. She was asking not to be discarded. I sat down beside her on the edge of the bed. You're not them. You never will be. She studied my face. That's not what I asked. I met her eyes. No matter what happens, I'm your father. I'll never abandon you. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe it yet. Maybe she never would. A few days later, Marjorie requested a meeting. I met her at the lakeside house. The one my father built with his hands and bad temper. The one she now wanted to preserve for the grandchildren. She stood on the porch in her wool coat, looking out at the frozen water like it was a relic from another life. I want to change the trust, she said. Put the house in Natalie and Jake's names. Keep it safe. For the future. I crossed my arms. Not happening. She blinked. Why? Because you don't get to shape their legacy after you helped tear mine apart. She looked genuinely stunned. I'm trying to do something right. I nodded. And I'm doing something fair. She turned to walk away, but I stopped her. They'll still get the house one day, I said. But it'll be through me. Not through some desperate rewrite of your conscience. She turned slowly, her voice colder now. You're becoming him. My father. She nodded. Feared. Alone. Powerful. And utterly hollow. I didn't flinch. I'd rather be hollow than betrayed. She walked back to her car. And I stayed on that porch, watching the ice settle over everything we used to call home. Jake's winter showcase at the university was small. Just a student-led business pitch session held in a renovated library hall. Parents sat on folding chairs pretending to understand revenue models while nursing lukewarm coffee. I showed up in the back unannounced. Black coat, no entourage, no fanfare. I watched as Jake presented with a group, confident, sharp, careful with his words. He didn't look at me once. Afterwards, I walked up to him near the refreshments table. He saw me but didn't smile. Good work, I said. He gave a short nod. Thanks. His tone was polite. Distant. Like I was a respected donor, not his father. You heading back to campus? I asked. Yeah. Some friends are grabbing dinner. Need a ride? No, he said. I'm good. We stood there, surrounded by the quiet murmur of other families laughing, hugging. He didn't move to leave. Not yet. I read your essay, I said. He looked up. The engine of integrity, I added. You kept a copy. Jake's jaw clenched just slightly. That was about you. The you I used to know. I didn't speak. He gave a small shrug. You were always tough, but you used to stand for something. Now I don't know. You think I went too far, I said. He nodded. I think you burned everything down and called it justice. We stood in silence. Then he said quietly, let me know if you ever decide to build something again. Something that matters. He left before I could answer. Back at the house, Natalie was rearranging her room. She had music playing softly, stacks of framed photos on the floor. One was from a camping trip back when she was maybe 7. In it, I had her on my shoulders, both of us laughing. I remembered that day. It rained later and we all slept in the car. She caught me staring. Do you want it? She asked, holding up the frame. I shook my head. No. It belongs to you. She nodded, then paused. Dad, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. Are you ever going to be different again? Different how? I mean like, less angry. I sat across from her. I don't know. She frowned. That's not the answer I wanted. I know. Snow began to fall that night, thick and slow. I stood at the window of the living room, staring out over the smart lawn, programmed to melt ice, detect pests, monitor foot traffic. I built this house to be perfect. Now it was silent. Natalie's music played faintly upstairs. Jake hadn't texted. Celeste was gone. My phone hadn't rung in days. Brant sent one last report that afternoon. Julius had pled guilty. Federal prison, minimum 7 years. Everyone else had either settled or vanished into financial ruin. My empire stood intact. My name was clean. My assets were untouchable. And my soul, my name, my story, my fatherhood felt locked in the same glass as my walls. Preserved. Remote. Unreachable. I watched the snow cover the smart driveway. Efficient. Quiet. Cold. And I wondered, just briefly, if it would ever melt.